Hello, Americans. Welcome to RGN, the Regular Guy News. I am your host, I am your anchor, Dan Black, and I am a regular dude. Let's get into the news cycle. Hello, welcome to RGN, the least pretentious name in news. The news where many would say we don't know what we're talking about, but that's okay, because we dive at least 2 articles deep to discover our answers that are potentially biased. I don't know. What do I know? Who knows? This is the age of dis and misinformation. 2 words that I'm not sure how to use, so I use both. Okay, before we get into this, remember this podcast is grassroots. A lot of you are writing me messages about how you enjoy this podcast. All I'm asking for you guys is to give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and tell one friend about the podcast. If you're looking for just fun, less pretentious news coverage, or you just want to laugh and hang, come here. You know what I mean? We're here. What's the big deal? Show some respect. Anyway, let's get into it. Before we talk about our topics for today, and we are, as I'm recording this, exactly 7 days, many would call that 1 week away from the big general election of one Mr. former Vice President Joseph Q. Biden. That's not his middle initial. And Donald H. Trump. I don't think that's his middle initial either. But we're going to be talking about the election a lot today. And the ramifications of those elections and how I see it and how the articles I see it. But before we do, we got to go out to the field, introduce our only RGN correspondent, Erin Finnerty. Do we have you?
Hello, Dan. Thank you for having me.
Erin
Hello?
reporting out in the field.
Dan?
Erin from the field. She's the Caitlin Collins of. Hello. Do we hear? Are you connected?
I can hear you now. Thank you
All right.
for having me.
Okay, I just want to know if we should switch from the split cam back to me cam and say sorry about that. We'll get that connection up and running and then move to another, classic
Yeah,
news
no,
style.
I'm here.
But you're here, so we don't
Yes.
have to use that kind of technology.
Mm-mm.
Erin, you're here. Let us know where you're out in the field this week.
Dan, I'm in the field again today.
Yeah,
Day
you're out in the field.
135 of my embedding here in my apartment in Los Angeles,
okay.
California.
Okay, all
About
right.
1 mile from your apartment.
Okay.
I'm telling you, it's getting pretty dull out here, Dan.
Yeah, it sounds like you're not using that travel stipend that we gave you. But
It's hard. It's hard to go anywhere right now.
That's right. But Erin, before we get into all the hot and spicy topics that we got this week, you're going to be working the polls this week, right?
Oh, yes. I begin work at the polls this Friday through Election Day.
Wow.
Here in LA. I figured since I'm stuck here on RG on assignment, I might as well assist the democratic process however I can. So yeah.
What do they tell? They tell you anything about like voter turnout, like any kind of specifics about that, like what to expect?
Yeah, what to expect when you're expecting voters.
Yeah. When you're expecting voters.
Well, I've done like an online
Congratulations,
training.
Congratulations, you're pregnant with voters.
Thank you. I'm a pregnant Chad.
Yeah.
Hanging Chad. Yeah, no, I did a couple trainings and, I'm not sure what turnout will be like. They don't really talk about that, but, they did touch on like, if you have a vote, like we're here to process all voters. So if you have someone who is unpleasant or acting, out of pocket, just to get them in and out as quickly as possible. So I've been trained on, the different stations and the polling centers, how to check people in, all of that stuff.
Anything about voter intimidation? Like, I guess you're in California, so no, they don't do that here because they just like this is going to go blue no matter what. So it's a waste of time, but they don't tell you anything about that, right?
No, I mean, I'm stationed here in Hollywood, so it's like, not an issue, but there is electioneering laws that say you can't wear my Biden Harris t-shirt. You can't within 100 feet of a vote center. So, hopefully
Right.
there's no issue there. But
Wow. Okay.
yeah, it
Yeah.
should
I
be
mean,
fun.
yeah. Well, I hope you guys have plans to get your votes in and make
Yeah.
your voice heard. But yeah,
Right.
Aaron. Before we get into the stuff I dug up for this week,
Sure.
I believe we have something in the mailbag, right? You can send us.
We
By the
do.
way, you couldn't be the least pretentious name in news without hearing from the people. And you can send us an email at regularguynews@gmail.com. If you want to have a question for us, or you want to rebut anything we said on here, and you want to have your voice heard, that's how you do it. Aaron, let's go over to the mailbag.
All right. The RGN, opening the RGN mailbag.
Let's head over to the
Another week.
mailbag. Let's get serious finally.
Yes.
All right, Aaron, what's
Well,
in the
Dan,
mailbag this week?
This week we have one item in the RGN mailbag, and it comes to us from listener Aaron with an A-W, Aaron W. And the subject of his message is court, quote, air quotes, packing. Aaron writes, do you disagree with adding justices entirely, or is it a branding thing that bothers you? Here's a video that explains exactly why it's needed. And he supplied a link to a YouTube video. He goes on to say, but most importantly, the courts were stolen. Like when you, Dan, got your phone stolen, you did whatever needed to get it back. You didn't stop trying because if you found it, then it may get stolen again. That would be counterproductive, so we can't not add justices because the Republicans might try to. If Biden does what really needs to be done, then Republicans, as constituted now, may never be able to regain that kind of power. And he's referencing a story that was told on the Comedians of Wrestling podcast.
Yeah, on my wrestling podcast about my phone.
Phone being stolen.
Yeah, my phone being stolen and me tracking it down. That's a deep cut. It's one of the things I love about our about the diehard listeners of my podcasts is that they appreciate the deep cuts. I love a callback. I love it. I love canon, and everything I say is canon. Okay,
it's canonical.
Absolutely. Not Nick Cannon. You can go back a couple episodes to hear me discuss Nick Cannon. He has been deleted. Yeah, Aaron. So, okay, one thing I love about one reason that I actually started this podcast and what I love is like you bringing up a comment I made last time, sending me some information about it, why you're curious against it. And we have some civil discourse about it, but also even a step further than civil discourse is like, I do not pretend to know everything. That's the whole point of this podcast. I'm just calling it like I see it. And let me tell you, the way I see it might not be the way it's meant to be saw, Ed. You know what I'm saying? So that's English. And so you sent me this information, and I looked at it. Now, I believe I said I wasn't here's what I believe I said last week. I'm not against the Democrats packing the court this time, because I said I don't think they really have a choice, given the slimy nature and that the Republicans have been playing for the past.
They're playing dirty, so that leaves the Dems no choice.
So that breaks the fairness. I say what bothers me is like, listen, I like to play like games, right? You know, like I like board games. I like Magic the Gathering. I like games with rules. I love, and it probably goes back to my accounting brain is, like following the rules. Even my improv brain, like improv has a lot of structure to it. I thrive with structure, and not only just following structure, like breaking structure. Like I like having control of knowing like, if like I'm telling an unconventional joke, I know I'm telling something that's not unconventional. I like telling a joke that's more like that if I'm telling a joke, I know it's just like set up punchline, right? I like to know that I'm doing that. So I like to have I like to have like structure, skeleton. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So you're not saying you're necessarily like a stringent rule follower. You like the existence of rules as a guideline for what's happening.
Right, like I think there's something in my brain where I'm like, if there's no rules, you're like, well, then there's nothing. You know what I mean? So that being said, what bothers me about court packing is like that seems like a break in the system. That's my initial view of it, which is like, well, if we don't have a set amount of justices, then like, all right, well, you can just keep adding. You're going to keep adding, and then what makes me kind of nervous, and which is unfair, is that the Republicans have shown no respect for precedent and no respect for fairness,
Mm-hmm.
and honestly, like democracy, truthfully. And so, this Merrick Garland, like the biggest hypocrisy I've ever seen is this Lindsey Graham situation.
Ugh,
I mean, it's not just Lindsey Graham; it's also Mitch McConnell, like saying
Mitch.
"use my
Oof.
words against me," and then just
Yeah.
heading up those hearings. Right? It's just like the biggest example of like, yeah, it's something we knew already, but this one's just so flagrant that you cannot run away from it. There's no running. And if you don't know what I'm speaking about, look it up. There's literally clips of Lindsey Graham saying like, if in an election year, uh, and the people are going to be electing the president, uh, we let the people decide who after the election, right? Who's going to be on the court,
Right.
and then in a month, when their general election already started, votes were already being counted. They
That's
pushed through
dirty.
their Supreme
That's
Court
dirty.
justice, which was Amy Coney Barrett, who is now officially a member of the United States Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, as of yesterday. So right. So my brain is like, oh well, we need these rules. It has to be 9. Okay. But so I looked into this, and because of you, Aaron, I looked into it. You sent me a video, and then
Mm-hmm.
I went 2 articles deep, as I always do, into the idea,
Mm-hmm.
the concept of court packing. And so let's take a step back. So a couple things about it. If so AOC put out a tweet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying expand the courts. And then she said Republicans do this because they don't believe Dems have the stones to play hardball like they do. And for a
Right.
long time, they've been correct. But do not let them bully the public into thinking their bulldozing is normal, but a response isn't. There is a legal process for expansion. So you're like, that feels true. It's like if
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna do this that would play dirty, then we're going to play dirty. Then I have a quote from Chuck Schumer, which was like, let me be clear. If Mitch McConnell and Senate Republicans move forward with this, then nothing is off the table for next year. Nothing is off the table. So packing the courts is not really, it's not, is a choice that Republicans made knowing the repercussions. Like
Right.
pushing this between Merrick Garland and pushing this nominee through, it seems like they know what's coming. If they lose this election, they know what's coming.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. It's like they chose there it could have gone one of two ways. They could have just done the right thing and, taken their own advice from 4 years ago and not done it and waited, but they pushed it through. It's like they chose this route. Like it wasn't
well, they
up to the
broke their
Dems.
precedent that they
Yeah,
tried to set.
exactly.
So they broke it. So it's like at some point, if you rob somebody, like Aaron said, I think stealing is right. Like when you rob somebody, eventually they're going to stand up for themselves. Even the biggest weenies eventually push
Mhm.
back. And the
Right.
Democrats are a bit of weenies, but it kind of goes deeper than that.
Yeah.
And thanks to so let's just say, what is court packing, just to get that out of the way. So I looked this up because I'm like, what exactly is that? So since 1869, there have been 9 seats in the United States Supreme Court, but the number is subject to change. The Constitution grants Congress the power to either add or subtract seats. It's pretty much that easy. The Supreme Court has seen as few as 5 justices and as many as 10 throughout its 231-year existence. So I didn't even realize that. Like I just always thought it was 9 because my whole life it's been
Right.
9.
Right.
And then wouldn't you think it's the most interesting thing about this Trump presidency is like he's shining a light on all the like unspoken laws, like all the like I think of like all the like Air Bud rules or whatever, where it's like it doesn't say in the law that you can't be a dog,
Yeah,
You know what
that's
I mean?
true. Right, right, right.
Right? And you're like,
Yeah, it's like stuff you never had a reason to think about it until there was a dog trying out to be on your basketball team.
right. And then you're like, I guess it's like not against the rules. No, it's
Comparing
under your.
Trump to Air Bud is generous to Trump, in my opinion.
Yeah, gorgeous dog. Um,
Beautiful dog.
Okay, so it says while the number of Supreme Court justices has fluctuated since its establishment, the idea of expanding the court and the last presidential attempt to do so popularly traced back to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who
Mm.
failed. It was, by the way, it was said Franklin D. Roosevelt here, and
Hmm.
just want to show you how smart I am that I
Wow,
knew
a
his middle
regular
name.
guy knows what the D in FDR stands
Just want
for.
to say, why many other times I have
That's
to
that
skip
right
over
there.
stuff in these
That's an
articles because I
RGN
can't pronounce a
non-exclusive.
word. This
Hmm.
is an example of me adding knowledge to an article.
Wow, adding knowledge.
Yes, absolutely. He
Okay.
failed his legislative bids in 1937 that could have increased seats on the Supreme Court from 9 to 15.
Wow.
But here's the interesting thing. At the time, the Supreme Court knocked down several of FDR's New Deal policies in an effort to encourage older justices to retire. FDR
Hmm.
pushed for the addition of a new seat for every justice older than 70 years old. As
Oh.
a result, as well as the restoration of full judicial pensions. Although the bill was ultimately not approved, aspects of its influence aspects of it influence the politics of the Supreme Court today. As Judge, So anyway, it goes on to quote something, but we don't need that. So look, this is really interesting. You're saying as far back as 1937, they've been talking about packing the court, and also for the same reasons of age, which is like we have this
Hmm.
system right now, which is like there's no democracy in the court. The court is like just lifetime appointments and randomly when you die, right?
When you die, if you choose to retire.
Right. If you choose to retire,
Yeah.
and it's like that's supposed to keep you, um, you free from political conflict. But
Hmm.
ultimately, yeah, what happened here is RGB was just fighting to stay alive, literally with a trainer every single
I
day,
know. I know.
riddled with cancer, just so this wouldn't happen. But okay, we can have arguments all day long about if she should have retired, but ultimately, it's tough. It's tough to have a law that's like at 70 you got to retire. Like people are
Right.
living longer nowadays, and like we've said, like that's your livelihood. Like telling people they have to retire is like, you got to start like sympathizing and empathizing with, and ageism is a problem in this country. Like some people are still with it at those ages.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I get it, but like a scant 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, RGB, she wasn't that much younger. You know what I mean? Like she
Yeah,
could have had some foresight into what the like say there's just a chance that you could die because you're super old and maybe unwell
right.
in 4 years. You wouldn't want to leave that up to chance. You'd want to give our friend Barack maybe a shot earlier at replacing you, but she didn't. She's a
Right.
hero, but still.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm saying I get it, but also also it doesn't mean you have to retire from being like in the law, right? Like being a
Mm-hmm.
justice. Like it just means you have to be
Yeah,
off the Supreme
off the
Court,
Supreme Court. Right, you can still be active, right?
right? It's all I don't know, but I mean, okay. Anyway, this is thing, So now, interesting thing about the Supreme Court now is we have three Supreme Court justices who all worked on Bush v. Gore for the Bush side.
Right,
Okay,
right.
and also we have more of these like textualists, but it's interesting because like the more I see this, I couldn't be against more of this concept of textualist more as it currently stands,
Right,
because it means you're trying to follow the book, but like we need some common sense, right? Like in modern
right.
day society as it's
Yeah, we
changing.
already have the book. Like you're there to rule in the time that we are in now. If it was just whatever the book says, and we just have like one guy interpreting the book,
Right.
reading the book.
So anyway, Aaron sent me this thing with this video of this guy, and it's like a 10-minute video, and it's worth
Mm-hmm.
It's really worth watching. It's on that Now This, which is a very Democratic leaning like social media
Yeah. I've watched a
thing.
couple of their videos
Yeah.
before.
They really play so just getting that, this is more left bent, but this guy makes these arguments here. I'm just gonna play you guys a clip from it, and it's worth listening to because I can't do what this guy's doing.
Society, the Republican Judicial Reform Organization, who wrote a paper urging court expansion a couple of years ago when they thought they would need to expand the courts in order to preserve their control over it.
They want to pack the court. You know what that means? They want to put on a lot of justices. These are things that are just horrible. I guess we could do that too, right? We could do that too.
Demographically, it's just going to get harder and harder for the Democrats to take the majority control of the Senate unless the system is unrigged and those 40 million voters are added to the rolls and statehood is granted to D.C. and Puerto Rico. Because just the way the Senate math works, a tiny slice of the population living in a large number of states is able to consolidate majority control of the Senate, which is what is happening now. Demographers are predicting that it's going to be less and less and less and less likely for Democrats to get majority control of the Senate moving forward. I don't think there's a bipartisan solution to any of this because, my analysis, which, you could absolutely disagree with, but my analysis is that what we're seeing across the range of policy issues, the gaslighting, the lying, the extreme policy positions, the allowing Russia to influence our election, all of it, it is a function of a ruthless partisan power grab of a party that knows that it is slipping into the minority because it is catering mostly to white people, and that can't win unless it cheats. And so there is zero incentive for the Republicans to de-radicalize or to compromise on any of this. They have consolidated control over the levers of power. We think that we can solve our problems at the ballot box, and we think the key to solving our problems is getting Trump out of office. So, of course, getting Trump out of office is important because he's reactive and his reactive personality is dangerous. But even if he is thrown out of office via impeachment and or at the ballot box, that doesn't mean that the Democrats are going to be allowed to govern. And when one party is not allowed to govern, even when it wins elections, that's not democracy. That's single-party rule.
Cool. So I just feel like he put that super well.
Yeah.
Which is, it kind of comes down to it, which he goes on to earlier in the video, actually, is that we have a major problem. We have a major shift in, we have an imbalance, truthfully, in the representation of what America is and what Americans believe, stand for, want, vote for even, and what that leads to because of electoral college, gerrymandering, and unlimited campaign finance reform. And so the Supreme Court affects if our democracy extremely like deeply, like to the point that what I'm understanding here is that if the Democrats don't pack the courts, we won't be able to fix all these crises we have going on, because we have it, and it all stems from the same thing, which is the big problem, which is unlimited quote unquote dark money that because of Citizens United, which is a Supreme Court decision where you can unlimited campaign finance. So follow the money, right? So yeah, and then we have gerrymandering, which is upheld by the Supreme Court, which is just cheating. It's voting cheating. And we have voter suppression, which the Supreme Court needs to correct. So expanding the courts basically is just unrigging the system, because the Democrats right now, unless the Democrats start, which is, something I've been thinking about, if the Democrats start moving around the country to fuck with the election cycle, we'd have to be right.
People are doing it though, right? Like they're
doing it because of the pandemic. you know?
Yeah.
But are they
Well,
doing it to make their vote count? Do
Well,
you
I
know?
know people who live, maybe say they live in California, are going back to their home state to vote, or who are submitting absentee ballots for in their hometown. Like maybe people who moved here recently are still
Right.
who are still registered to vote
But like that
are
eventually catches up.
consciously, yeah.
Because, like, you know, like the first year I lived in California, I was probably still registered in New York or something until I got a driver's license, and I was, you know what
Right.
I mean? So it's like you know, you had like stuff like that, and like, you know, um, you know, so if you don't on paper live in a state, but eventually you get pulled over, they look at your license and like, do
Right.
you live here? And like, you know, that only lasts for so long. You know, you'll need to do something bureaucratically that'll make you get a license in your state, you know?
Yeah.
And so you can't, it's not really sustainable. But, you know, he's talking about statehood to DC and Puerto Rico. You know, Hillary Clinton lost she won she had 3 million more popular votes. George Bush even didn't win the popular vote. So these Republican presidents are winning but losing. You know, we talk about it, but
Right.
it's something we like take for granted. So you have a small. So as we go, you know, so I it's kind of interesting. I think that the other thing I saw is that if they do pack the court to Democrats, I think the modern Republican Party will not be able to recover from that. Like the stakes are
Yeah.
so high. Because I don't think they'll be able to get those kind of justices. They'll never have this level of power again. So
Which explains a lot with their like pushing
Right.
this appointment through.
So if they put like 3 more justices through, it's funny. There's this political cartoon from 1937. It's like of FDR, and it's like here, I'm gonna find it so I can read it. But it's like it's a packed court, and it's like, do we want to? The heading is like, do we want a ventriloquist act in the Supreme Court? And it's FDR, and this packed court. It's like they're all a bunch of dummies in the court, and they all just say yes, 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 and he has his hand up there, like the back of their, you know, their backs.
Right.
You're like, this was going on in 1937. You know, it's the same shit. Pretty interesting. So yeah, I mean, I it's interesting because so Aaron, I just want to say to you that in terms of in terms of packing the court, I am so frustrated by the behavior of the right. And I think that also another thing tied to this is the climate crisis. Like, we're running out of time. This is what this point this guy's making, and so we get the courts. You know, I mean, let's just have a real conversation. You can't have people on the court who don't believe in modern science.
Right.
You can't be guided by faith when you have other people's lives in your hand. It's just it's not how this works. Because I was thinking about this the other day. I was like, you know, I said this on the podcast before, but like after this election, this election's a no-brainer for me. But going forward, I'm gonna have like an open mind about where my vote goes. And I don't know exactly what that's going to mean, but, like, I cannot be voting for too much fakeness, you know, as we get, like, I cannot be voting constantly for people who are, like, pretending to be Christians and, you know, when you're like,
Right.
you know.
Well,
Because, like, Obama, you think Obama's a religious guy?
No.
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 Right?
No.
Right? Like everything he got accused of was true. Like they were like, oh, he joined a church. He probably did just join a church for his political aspirations, but he shouldn't have to. So that's the thing, he shouldn't have to.
I know. Well, you know what? I'm watching the show The Good Wife, and on the show, the not so good husband of the main character is
who's he played
running
by? Chris Noth?
Peter, yeah. He is
Mr.
running
Big
for
from,
Mr. Big,
Sex and City,
colloquially known as Mr. Big.
Yeah.
He's running for governor in the state of Illinois, and a big part of his whole thing is, like, in the episode I just watched, they're going around asking his wife, like, are you religious? He has to make appeals to Christian voters because his opposing candidate is a self-proclaimed atheist, and, you know, it raises that whole issue. Like, are you just putting this on for a show, or do you really believe this? And, like, it's a whole thing.
It's kind of like,
you shouldn't have to.
Yeah, it's kind of like, it's like, first off, I'm not saying your faith should count against you per se.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But I don't like that our political system pushes people to pretend to be religious. You know?
Right.
So
Right.
that's it's like we should be more accepting of who people are. But interesting enough, I was watching so in terms of just closing out this court packing situation, I'm totally for court packing. Aaron, thank you
Yeah.
for writing it and made me
Yeah.
look into it even further.
And that was a great video that you shared.
Yeah, the video's great. We should start a Facebook group or something so I could post it in there. But
Dangerous territory, Dan.
dangerous. But yeah, I want to do more Facebooking.
Mm.
I don't. But so yeah, yeah, I'm all for it. Because I feel like the Democrats kind of laid it out, being like, "Hey, if you do this, nothing's off the table." They were like, "Here's what our intentions are." The thing is, Joe Biden says he's against it, but he's not going to be against. He's against it as a concept, but in this instance, he will not be against it. What they did here, because it's crazy. You're watching like, the Senate right now is off till November 9th. No stimulus bill passed, but they somehow were able to find the time to pass a Supreme Court justice in less than a month.
I know. I know.
A 48-year-old woman. And not to mention her, I'm not saying she's not qualified. No one's saying that, but it's like, does she not think that, like, does she not, her participating, I guess I don't blame her because I guess I don't really blame her because it's like, you get the call once, right? Like, I doubt that they're going to come. They were going to put, if she said no, it's not like they were going to wait.
Right.
She had no choice. And this is
They were going to put
life.
someone through. Either way, it would have been her or someone else on the short list. And when the door opens, you have to run through it. And that's exactly what she did.
It's kind of hard to blame her, but at the same time, I mean, like
where are her scruples?
Does anybody stand for something? Like,
right,
it's just
exactly.
like, does anybody stand for anything? No.
Well, yeah, she's like supposed to be the letter of the law, and yet she's just like, oh, this is fine. I'll take the job now. No problem.
Yeah, it's like, can we, like, it would just, I'm just saying, wouldn't it be nice if we just had, like, one person surprisingly do, like, the right thing? Like, just, and I mean, like, one big figurehead, like, one big, because, like, even, like, guys like John Bolton, he came out and then he wrote his book. It's like, why didn't you come out when you're in that position? Like, what? And even like, I talked to my mom, and even, like, Fauci and Dr. Birx or whatever, you're like, why are they such wusses? Like, just come out, like, because you're gonna get fired. Like, why don't you come out and just be
he'll
like,
be employable.
yeah, like, but I'm just saying, like, he's 80 years old. Why don't you come out and just be like, this president is out of control? Like,
yeah.
I guess because he's like, I don't know, maybe there's ramifications for it. I don't know, but yeah, but anyway, yeah. Okay, so here's the other thing. Brett Kavanaugh. We all know Brett Kavanaugh.
Oh, yeah.
Supreme Court Justice. So, anyway, Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. You know him. You don't love him.
Brett Kavanaugh. He just wants to drink a few beers with his buddies.
Yeah.
Squeeze box and...
Oh, my God. Squeegee and... I don't know. All I remember is squeegee and something. Oh man. And I gotta say, by the way, just a side note, talking about the mail, I'm noticing, including a ballot. I had a mail. I told you one of my neighbor's ballots was dropped in my box, which I've said that.
Yeah.
Then I also just got another one of my neighbor's package, USPS. And then I just saw something. I got a thing saying it was delivered and it's not here. So I don't know what the F is going on with the post office.
I don't know either. They could just
Well, actually, we do know what's going on with the post office.
Well, everything's weird. Like UPS is like just dumping things in the front of my building. They're not like bringing it to. No, they're not bringing it to my door.
Aaron, it's Trump's fault. Okay, this is a left skewing podcast. Okay,
it's sad.
Blame it on Trump, please.
I blame everything on Trump. It's fine.
I really do. The guy sucks. All right,
you name it. You can blame it on him.
Okay, so Brett Kavanaugh. So they're talking about the election right now, which we'll talk a little bit about the
Okay.
this big election coming up. So what's going on right now is okay. So we have a lot of mail-in ballots.
Mm-hmm.
So in Pennsylvania, I believe they ruled that your ballot can be received up to 5 days after November 3rd if it's postmarked by November 3rd.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. So look, which is I don't know how this is controversial. I mean, I guess I do because everything is so politicized nowadays. But like, tax returns work this way. Tax returns, you got to get them right.
Right.
Postmark. We all understand. You postmark something when it's supposed to go. That's standard practice in America.
Yeah, that's why you got the big line of folks at the post office on tax day, right?
Right. That's how we do it. That's how it's done. So there should be no difference for voting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then Donald Trump's getting out there being like, I want results on the day, right? It would be a terrible thing if it wasn't. So Brett Kavanaugh is basically echoing exactly Trump's sentiment here. He said, Kavanaugh wrote in his concurring opinion about mail-in ballots need to be returned by Election Day, saying, we want to avoid the chaos and suspicions of impropriety that can ensue if thousands of absentee ballots flow in after Election Day and potentially flip the results of an election. What the fuck are you
Doesn't
talking?
make any sense.
This is a guy in the Supreme Court. I read that and I was like, oh, we got to pack this thing. Time to pack it
Yeah,
up.
pack it. Pack it.
Because, I mean, this is like stupidity. Like, I've worked for Republicans. I've worked for conservative people. I've worked in taxes. This has nothing to do with anything.
Mm-hmm.
Things need to be postmarked by the mail. Like, what could happen? You know?
Well, if you apply the same logic to taxes, that's like saying we need to have everyone's tax returns on April 15th. Well, that changes the whole game. Like, it doesn't make any sense. It's you sent your taxes in, it was postmarked on the day, and then it gets there when it gets there. Plus all the fuckery with the post office. But what's the difference between this and the postmarking your taxes?
Yeah, first off, can we just put our fucking heads on? Like, the president doesn't get what's it called? Confirmed? Doesn't get instated?
Inaugurated?
Inaugurated, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's lock it in. Until January 20th. So we can take a little time. It's not a big deal.
What's the big rush?
So it makes no sense. It's just more stupidity. And so, yeah, Brett Kavanaugh, the guy's a jabroni like we thought he was. Turns out he actually is a jabroni.
He's
now,
a big jackass.
that can't be a constitutional thing. I mean, that is not, like, I'm just saying, that is very worrisome. That is not a just logical, especially during this pandemic. And I can't imagine is there any law in that? Let me look at I have this article. Let me see. Is this guided by any law? Okay. Yeah, so, right, Pennsylvania has blocked it, and GOP is opposing. See, GOP is opposing any policies that means you get to vote. You know, like any policies that allow people to just vote, like, fine. Like,
right.
Anyway, plus there's these videos watching of Brett Kavanaugh from the Bush v. Gore days. Right, and you know he's similarly he's jabron. Okay, so anyway, did you watch this before we get into some election results and where we're at? Did you see any of the 60 Minutes interview?
Oh, I actually read the full transcript and watched a clip of it. I read the transcript for Trump and Pence's interviews with sweet Leslie Stahl.
Sweet Leslie Stahl.
Industry veteran.
What an interesting concept, because did you look at Biden's and Kamala's?
No.
No, me either.
No.
All I watched is the Trump one.
Yeah.
And, you know, the thing, it's like, the problem with Trump, I mean, there's a million problems with Trump, but you're like, we're not going to be able to escape this guy until he's dead. I mean, that's the reality, because even if he loses the election, They're already talking about starting a Trump TV station, which is frankly a brilliant move. And if I'm him, I want to lose this election, claim it was
Right.
rigged. If I was him, I'd want to lose, like claim it's rigged,
Right.
go golfing, start this TV show. You could when he's just a citizen, go on TV, go every night, prime time. He'll have the highest ratings of anybody, highest ratings. And he loves ratings, and he go in there and just talk about what idiot he is,
Obsessed with
how he was
ratings.
the
All he
best
does is
president
watch
ever.
TV. Right.
Right? He'll just go in there.
Yeah.
I was the best president ever. I was kind of ahead of my time, really. And here's what I did in
He's
my office.
obsessed. He loves TV. All he does is watch TV. That's like his number one source. So, and all he cares about is ratings. They're so important. So just be a TV guy.
Right. And then that'll set up all his kids to be politicians and Kushner, and then they'll run for office. Like the imprint of Trump, I imagine, is going to go very far, especially if he loses. You know, because what will happen is then Biden will win, and then he'll stumble with this coronavirus in some way because it's a very difficult situation,
Right.
but
Pretty
he
far gone at
won't
this
submit
point.
to it, right? But it'll be like there'll be some kind of stumbling, just like Obamacare, where it's like the website didn't work, which somehow is the equivalent of dismantling healthcare with no problem,
Right.
with no
Right.
backup, right?
Can't fix that HTML. Just get rid of the whole thing.
Yeah, like the false equivalency of like, oh, that website didn't work, so you knock somebody for trying. It's like the difference between like a critic and like a doer, you know?
Right.
But anyway, so it's like, yeah. Anyway, so, yeah. So Trump, I mean, the Trump imprint, it's kind of scary to think where it goes. Anyway, so in this interview with Leslie Stahl, the thing about Trump, I will never understand this. I will never get why he didn't. No one gave him, or I bet he can get any resource he wants. Why he didn't just get a 1-page stat sheet of specifics, 1 page, and like just went in there and like even give bullshit figures, but at least look like you know what you're talking about.
I know. It's crazy to read his answers because you're like, it's like unlike anything I'd ever read before. It's like I have text threads in my phone that are more coherent than this in-person exchange he had with Leslie Stahl. It's really crazy.
Right, because it's like the Leslie Stahl interview. He sits down. Like, I get it. You want to go into your rallies, and it's just a rally. Literally, all I have to say is lock her up. They go nuts. It's fine.
Right.
The rallies are one thing. Rallies are just like, oh, that was a good time. It's a concert. People are like, that was a fucking good concert.
Yes.
You know, he puts on a good concert. Whatever. But like when you sit down with Leslie Stahl one-on-one, you would think at least just get some fake figures and lie about your fake figures at least.
Yeah, pull the Axios thing with the chart, the flimsy charts.
Right. Even that, like, with that, like, as opposed to just going there and just be like, his argument is we're rounding the turn, and then they're like, oh well, how? Well, this is going up, this is going up, and then he doesn't have any stats to back it up. He doesn't have any healthcare plan. He doesn't have like tenets of his healthcare plan. So you're kind of like, he doesn't do any prep. It's crazy that people don't care.
McEnany handed Leslie Stahl the huge binder. So he did have his health plan, which has no health plan in it. It's just a big book. Did you see that?
I did see that. So what happens in this interview, it's on 60 Minutes, it's worth watching, is she's asking him extremely fair questions. They're tough. And she says, like, I'm going to ask you tough questions, but she's being pretty fair, and he's just, like, attacking this woman. It's like, it's like uncomfortable to watch. And she's, like, such a pro, actually. Like,
I know.
Like, these people have to go into interviews with Trump, who's the president of the United States, and be like, you are just here to point out the facts, answer his questions, and not take anything personally. And he takes that for granted. So he attacks people personally, knowing that they can't come back. So it's like, it's crazy. But
I mean, she did a fair job because he kind of tried to counter things that she was saying, and she was like, well, no, we're not around it. Like, what do you have to say about the spike and all this stuff? And he immediately goes to your media, fake news.
Right.
just deflects everything. Doesn't even make an attempt to answer a lot of the questions.
And also, like, so there's just so many things, like, like how he puts no effort into making like cohesive messaging, and it's like I don't know who it has to fool, and like what he's done is he's made his followers like, if you want to vote for him, you have to just like literally. There's a guy I follow on Facebook. Guy grew up in the same street as me. Guy, I grew up playing hockey with this kid, like, you know,
Mhm.
and he's a Trump guy, and he lives in Florida, and he's saying his quote. His post was like, "You don't have to love Trump to know he's like still the right choice or whatever." And it's like already admitting like, "Hey, I know he's a complete ass clown," you know,
Right.
and so I don't understand how Trump he can't help but double down on it, And in this interview,
Right.
she's just saying to him like, she literally is giving him credit for the economy, but he has to say we had the best economy we've ever seen. And she's like, "Well, that's not true." And you're like, "Yeah, well, you speak in superlatives, you're gonna say things that are not factual, because that's what
Mm-hmm.
that is, right? That's gonna be subject to opinion, and also it's extremely vague, so it puts a huge dent over the entire
Right.
economy. So why don't you talk about the GDP of 2018, or like, I don't know, it's something specific?" And then
Yeah.
it said everything he says is just like, no one's done more for. He literally says no one's done more for blacks than me, and then he says he'll go into Michigan. No one did more for Michigan than I did. And if you
Mm-hmm.
watch Biden and Obama out on the trail, I mean, the specifics these guys are like I mean, they're running circles around him in terms
I
of speeches.
know. I mean, they have specifics. He has no specifics.
Right, so he set himself up to be in this place where it's just a referendum on him. Anyway,
Right.
watch it. I don't understand why he doesn't come up with specifics. And the healthcare plan, I mean, the amount of resources he has, they can't write a fucking healthcare
What a
plan.
goof. What a goof. It's like that binder was so stupid because it's like, that, sure, you have this symbolic, like Mr. Trump wants you to have his healthcare plan. Like, that the people at 60 Minutes are going to open it and see that it's not a healthcare plan, right? And then you're going to look dumb as fuck.
Not to mention they're handing this elderly woman like a 30-pound book.
I
What the fuck?
know.
What are you doing?
I know.
And then he walks out of Pence, and like, I don't feel bad for
Oh,
Pence because he's such
I
like a
mean, he's
slime
a
also,
fucking
but like,
stooge.
but God, he got in there and like that guy, the positions that Trump puts him in, he had to go in there and play such damage control, and he did a great job. But there's no amount of damage control you could do to mitigate like what happened. I mean, Trump just looks like a complete asshole, and he doesn't
He
care.
did a
He's going
great
for
job
broke.
in that he was like at least kind of civilized, but also came off like a big dumbass. Like, Thanksgiving's my favorite holiday.
Yeah, and so I
You
know
have no answers
I know
for the
I know he's like
people.
he's pulling that like if we're still living in like Jack and Diane America or whatever, like like
Right.
heading down to the Tasty Freeze, like it's like,
Mhm.
dude, what are you doing, man? Like people are dying, people are
I
literally
know.
like, whether you're dying or not. Let's say coronavirus hasn't affected your life at all, like you're still deciding, like you're literally saying like you're like, should we have grandma on Thanksgiving? And grandma's like naturally I might not have another Thanksgiving in me, so do I get the risk of having the virus, like seeing like my family, or like this shit is heartbreaking with Christmas and Thanksgiving coming
know.
up, like we're rounding a turn. It's like no coherent message for how to keep yourself fit. It is so reckless. This is gonna go down in history as like, you look at the textbooks. I mean, the only way you could teach Trump in the future is through video, because you
Right.
couldn't write down his deal. It won't, you know what I mean? Like you can't. So
My educational videos have they're the most beautiful, highest rated educational videos
yeah, I
ever.
mean, it's gonna be like, I can't even imagine. I mean, anyway. So okay, look, we editorialized
Mm-hmm.
our view of Trump's 60-minute thing, but ultimately, to go back to my point,
Mm-hmm.
we both didn't watch the Biden one.
No.
And so it's like there is this love-hate relationship with Trump where you're like, I just want to see what I want to see what he's gonna say. I said this like in the movie private parts in Howard Stern. Like
Mm-hmm.
they're like, yeah, he's getting the highest ratings, and they're like, why? People are offended by him, and they're like, well, people who love him say, they say, why do you listen? He says, I want to hear what he's gonna say next, and then they're like, and the
Right.
people who hate him, they listen also because they want to hear what he's gonna say next. And that's what Trump is like, you whether you like it or not, you have to admit you have a pro wrestling love affair with the guy. A lot of people do, especially the people
Mm-hmm.
all the way on the left. But we want to get rid of him. But also, when it comes down to it, he's getting the heat of walking out, and you're looking at the transcript of his thing. And so that's why
Right.
he needs to. That's why he's almost. He's not more dangerous, but he's just dangerous with a beating heart at this point.
Right.
You
I
know?
mean, we just love seeing people we don't like fuck up. So when it comes to something like this interview, you're like, yeah, I wanna watch that.
I know. But it's really interesting because Don Lemon and Chris Cuomo, they do their their little
Oh, Don.
they do their little crossover segment.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they disagree a lot, which is actually pretty cool because they see the world very differently. Those two guys, even though they're both clearly liberal guys.
Mm-hmm.
But that's one of the. To be honest, with CNN, I enjoy when those two talk because they'll normally end on they'll talk about the biggest moment from Chris's show. So
Mhm.
last night that happened to be. Chris had like one of Trump's big campaign advisors on, and they had
Gotcha.
like a big argument. I mean, it kind of got like crazy. Trump's guy was just going after Chris. He literally had a photo of him and his brother from earlier on, being like, "Look, here's you and your brother joking about Q-tips for getting tested. You guys make jokes also, but Trump's not allowed to make jokes.
Right.
And
Right.
you're like, it was like it got like that, and then
Mm-hmm.
and then he was really, really attacking Chris Cuomo, being like, "You pretended to come out of the basement," and he's like, "Hey, I admit to doing stuff wrong. I'm just doing this show. You're representing Trump. It's interesting you don't want to talk about him. It
Right.
was kind
Right.
of crazy." But anyway, the point is that um, I forget the exact point, but they were talking generally, and Chris Cuomo was saying like he believes that people believe Trump. He's like, his followers believe the stuff he says.
Mm-hmm.
And Don Lemon is kind of like, they don't. He's like, they don't. They don't actually believe a lot of it. They voting, but they'll vote for him anyway. But they know a lot of the stuff he says is bullshit. And Cuomo was like,
Right.
hey, a lot of people in this country don't believe in evolution. And it was interesting. They had an interesting debate where it's like, yeah, we know people vote for Trump, but how many people like him or what percentage of a Trump voter is like, I just vote for him because of his I think he's better for the country or whatever, for whatever, the economy or whatever reason. And I wonder what percentage actually believe he's fighting for us. And it's like we need this kind of personality in the White House, and he speaks the truth and people can't handle it.
That's a good question.
We don't know. There's no.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's rhetorical, but
I know. I have no. I mean, it's definitely both, but I mean, he's just publicly fucked up, and the COVID numbers don't lie. So I don't know how you could, and just you'd have to be willfully ignorant to really be like, oh, I believe everything he says.
Right. I think it's not really as simple as they were making it out. I don't think it's I think it's more people are doing an equation on their head. I think people mostly believe Biden is people are genuinely scared of the left. That's really the big thing for me. Is I think people are genuinely scared of the AOCs and the
AOC
super left.
+3.
Right. I think people are
posse.
genuinely they're scared of the left, and I think the left's done themselves no favors with their social media perception. I do think cancel culture, things that their crowns that the left wear, abolishing the police. This stuff's actually not very popular. That's just the reality. We can again, we've done episodes here where I understand the messages of it, and I have a lot of problems personally with how the police act in our society. I don't understand. They seem to not. I don't get it. I don't like when there's these shootings and immediately these unions come out. Like today, yesterday there was a shooting in West Philadelphia. Immediately these unions come out and say these cops are also devastated. Like they protect them so blindly because that's what the union
Right.
does, and there's no just like actual conversation. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's very frustrating that we like these officers seem so protected. You know, from wrongdoing. I feel like I'm not protected from that in any job I've ever had.
Right. Right.
You know,
Definitely not. No.
so anyway, my point is I have a lot of problems with police, but when you really break it down, a lot of these extreme left policies are not very popular to the point that Biden's had to disavow them.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So I get people who are like, hey, Trump sucks, but like I'm just gonna vote for him because I'm so worried about that stuff. I don't get it. I just see it. I get it is not right. I don't get it. I think that there's so much more on the ballot. Like it's corny, but Biden's like the soul of America is on like the
Mm-hmm.
ballot.
Mm-hmm.
Put it in whatever terms you want to put it. I don't say soul because that's too religious for me. It's too spiritual for me. I'm a man of zero
Mm-hmm.
spirituality that people know.
Mm-hmm.
But the integrity of America is definitely on the ballot.
Then on the ballot.
And so I just think
I
would be like
know.
the people are like, well, he's an asshole. Is basically you're saying integrity doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is my pocketbook, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, with this COVID thing too, it's like, how do you look past that?
I don't know. Anyway, let's move on. Let's get back to the mailroom. I think let's get back to the mailroom and look at the polls. Let's look at Election
take a quick
Watch
trip over the
2020.
Mhm.
Lock it in.
RGN Election Watch.
Yeah. So
Brought
okay.
to you by.
Oh yeah, brought to you by
Monday Night Raw is presented by Southern New Hampshire University.
So we're brought to you
Our
by Southern New
sponsors.
Hampshire University. It's our sponsor from the wrestling podcast. But all right, let's bring it over. So okay, right now, Biden's holding a big lead over Trump right now. That's the perception. And look, in my constant effort, when I get on the phone with people I know, it runs the gamut. Everybody is like, some people are like, Trump's getting smoked, and then some people like, I was talking to my parents, and they're like, they're scared of the world. You know what I mean? So they're scared. They're like,
Right.
this is like 2016 again. Like he's gonna win. They also live in Long Island, New York, and Long Island, New York has a lot of Trump supporters. So I think their perception is very much like where you are. Like where I am, there's no Trump signs where we live. I mean,
No.
there's barely any Biden signs because it's just assumed.
I see Biden Harris signs, but there's not a ton of them.
There's more Nithya signs than anything. which
Yeah,
is, like,
we've got a
this
lot of. I've seen
local-
cars painted with Nithya's name on it.
Yeah, well, this woman Nithya is running for council here in LA. Interesting.
Right.
Is I think her husband was a writer on How I Met Your Mother, I believe, or
Oh,
something.
Gotcha.
So, because I was trying to figure out where all her money comes. She's a lot of money.
Yeah. If you could see, she's like running for, what is the position? City council.
City council. But
City
everyone seems to
council.
like her. I mean, I voted for her.
Yeah, I did too. But her campaign is like, and maybe it's just the
She has the
community
most
that we live in.
funded local campaign I've ever seen in
Yeah.
my life.
Right. It's pretty advanced.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I've been
yeah.
hearing her name for a long time too. So this isn't just like something that's ramped up in the last couple months. Like I've been hearing about her for like probably a year. So
The point is that LA is such a lock for Joe Biden that you don't even see Biden signs because it's pointless. It's almost
Right.
egregious. It's like, yeah, we know, guy. Like I walk my dog, I walk by a Biden sign, and I'm like, oh, good for you.
Oh, right, good for
you. Yeah, you're like, okay, man, real bold,
Yeah.
But no, I support it though, But okay, so let's see. So here's the deal. This article I'm reading right here, and I saw a bunch of articles. I looked at what's his name? What's that guy's name? Nate Silver, the 1839 or whatever he is. 538. Yeah, 538. I looked at that, and there's a good article there. But here, ultimately, this one was simpler, and also I liked it because it felt more conservative, which people are getting tough. So it said Biden holds a big lead over Trump. This is the article, but race could tighten, according to an All-America survey. So for right now, Joe Biden holds an 11-point lead over Trump 1 week before the election. but this thing shows it could tighten. Biden's lead Trump by 51% to 40%, a 2-point increase from the June poll, and 6 points better than in April. So but here's the thing that I noticed when I was reading it. It says the poll of 800 registered voters nationwide found the president's overall approval rating remains negative by 11 points at 42 to 53%, around the average of his presidency. So a couple of things to note in that is that 800 people, that's not a lot of people to poll. I mean,
It's a small sample size.
that's
Seems
very
small.
right? Yeah, and so I'm looking at this poll here, and it's like, yeah, Biden's leading, but it says 800 registered voters nationwide from October 21st to 24th. 800? We're basing polls on only 800 people? Do you think you need like 1 million?
Yeah, that would be a more representative batch, you'd think.
Yeah. So anyway, the president has also lost his long-standing positive approval rating on handling the economy for the second survey in a row, with America is now evenly split at 47%. The poll found that, has a margin of error of plus or minus 3.5%. I'm not going to pretend I understand what a margin of error is. Found that Biden has drawn even with Trump in support from senior citizens and white women, two groups the president won in 2016. But it also shows a substantial part of Biden's lead drawn from new voters and young voters, two groups whose turnout has long been suspect in election. It comes down to the younger voters and the non-2016 voters. This is Democratic pollster said. If they do not turn out in substantial numbers, that makes the entire election a ton closer. So I think that's all I need to really read, because Biden's ahead in all these states, and the other but right now it all comes down to voter turnout. If you get these people who didn't vote in 2016 and people who and the young vote, Biden wins this handily.
Yeah. And I think that it sounds like it's trending that way based on the numbers that we're already seeing for early votes in some states. And I think younger voters are more mobilized this time around because of Trump.
Right. So, because
and social, and like this campaign has been like, a lot of it's been on social media. So, the younger folks, it's not just like this election, like, has been on TV. Right. Like, you can't escape it.
And also, so the other thing is, like, in these polls, it says the ranking of the issues, like what voters' issues for this election. The voters, they choose healthcare and the handling of the pandemic as the two top election issues. And that's Biden's stronghold.
Right.
The economy and law and order were next, and those break for Trump. But also, voters ranked personal character integrity as a top issue this time. And those responding to that said it was their most important issue, favored Biden by 66%. So the other thing is that three of the least important issues are taxes, immigration, and relations with China. And those are like huge Trump issues, but they're the least important.
Right.
And climate change also is a huge issue for Biden, and it ranks very low on the list, like it always does. No one gives a shit about climate change when it comes to voting, and that's how it's always been.
Well,
they can't get people to care about the climate.
Yeah, the Earth, the planet that we live on.
No, they can't get. They can't ever do that.
Who cares? Right.
So that's interesting. Is that so? So Trump keeps trying to run from this pandemic, but it's the number one issue people are voting for, and healthcare, and he has no answers for those two. It's like that's what people are voting on, and you think he would have these comprehensive plans of what we're doing Q4 for the pandemic. Like, I don't understand what the fuck he was thinking.
I have no idea. Well, and also, like, so CNN had an article saying like this could be the election of the young voter. So if you think about it, like if you're a young person, the things that you care about are like, I can't go outside and enjoy my life, and I'm about to fall off my parents' health care, so I'm going to need health insurance at some point. I don't have a job. So it makes sense that, younger voters are turning out in higher numbers and registering to vote
Right.
higher than they were in 2016.
Right. So basically, it's looking like, and just what to expect on election day if they're breaking this down, is it's looking like Pennsylvania is the big prize for this election. Like Trump, it's looking like, based on the electoral map, he basically can't win without Pennsylvania. Or like something like 2% chance of winning if he doesn't get Pennsylvania.
Right.
That's according to 538. And so let's look at what's going on in Pennsylvania right now. So we know that Joe Biden, which by the way I have to correct myself from a previous podcast, Joe Biden he said, "Oh, I'm not against getting rid of fracking." There's quotes of him saying, "I'm going to get rid of fracking." So, they were showing some videos of people in these towns, fracking towns, and I'm like, I totally get why these people are voting for Trump. I mean, they're like, we've been devastated by this pandemic, and if Biden comes in and bans fracking, we're going to be like done. So, you know what I'm saying?
Ban fracking. Yeah. But could the messaging be any clearer? Like, he's not going to ban fracking. He keeps saying it, except on federal land.
Except on federal land. Most of it's on private land. Most fracking is on private land, as I said. But also, this is another issue where, like, I wish we would cut the bullshit, Like,
right.
Democrats obviously are going to ban fracking at some point. Let's be honest. They need to ban fracking. We need to move towards, we need a Green New Deal probably, which I'm going to do on a future episode to look into, like, that sounds like what this country needs. Just logically, just from everything I'm looking at, we need something like that because we have to take people who make their living in fracking and we need to transition them into something that is greener. So, right? And like, I mean, I have an electric car now,
Right.
I'm like,
good for you.
Oh,
good for you.
I appreciate that. But like, guys, it's a beautiful thing. I mean, I go to shop at the grocery store. You plug in while you're in there. I filled my car with gas because mine's a hybrid. It has gas also. I'm just talking about saving money. Like,
yeah,
I fucking save a ton of money with an electric car.
I love that. I gotta get me one of those.
Not to mention, I've had the car for like 6 months. I've only filled the gas tank twice.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay, so let's look at what this means for Pennsylvania. So the polls have been tighter in Pennsylvania. Biden's current lead is 5.1 points. And in 2016, polls were off by 4.4 points in the Keystone area, in the Keystone State. Sorry. Trump won it by 0.7 points after trailing in the final polling by 3.7 points there. So with a 2016 style polling error in Pennsylvania, Biden would be cutting it awfully close, perhaps even so close that court rulings on factors like naked ballots could swing the outcome. So based on the math here, he's still winning, but it's really close. If you use the error of last year. Last time was off by 4.4, and he's winning by 5.1. So this is too close to call. So, and naked ballots, by the way, is just like some of these states, if you put a ballot, there's an envelope that has to be put within the envelope. And so that's something that's like, by the way, I think is complete bullshit. It should count no matter what.
So
what does that
stupid.
matter? Who's swapping them out? Like, what are we even
Who
talking
needs
about?
that? Yeah.
What does that envelope do? I'm not even sure. Wouldn't you be able to see if the seal's broken on the other one?
I have no idea. Ours, California ballots, it's a one envelope system.
Right. Anyway, so yeah, look, so that's really what it comes down to. Is
so we'll see. Pennsylvania.
Biden can still win without Pennsylvania, but he would have to get all the other states back, like Wisconsin, Michigan. But it seems like he's doing really well in Michigan and Wisconsin right now.
I've consulted with some folks in my home state of Michigan, incling Pat F.
I mean, Aaron,
writer,
you're Pennsylvania. You've been in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I've lived in a couple swing states. And I talked to my cousin who lives on the west side of the state, which is like the Bible Belt of Michigan. And I asked him how it was going with voting out there. And he said that the majority of the signs in like his neighbors' yards are for Biden. And CNN talked to voters in that part of the state, and they were all voting for Biden. I think Governor Whitmer is well liked, so by like the majority of sane people. So I think, you know, Michigan sounds like it's leaning blue. And in Pennsylvania, though, I'm not sure. I have a friend who still lives there, and she lives in like the coal mining area of the state, and there are some like serious Trump freaks there. Like, I think, Dan, I showed you a picture of a
freaks?
mobile home that's like decorated. Like there's a
That's too
Trump
biased,
as
Aaron.
Rambo flag.
Wow. Oh yeah, you sent me that. That was crazy.
Yeah. So who knows? That Pennsylvania is a huge state with like 2 major cities in it. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well,
I've been
okay.
checking in with my swing state contacts.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. I guess, you know, that's from your extremely small sample size, but smaller than, would you say smaller than 800?
Smaller than 800. I'd say I talked to one person in Michigan, one person in PA, one person in North Carolina, one person in Ohio and Texas. So
That's beautiful.
I've been keeping my ear to the streets.
Okay. Well, anyway, so it looks like Biden is up, but it's close. It's you know, this election's going to be close, unfortunately. So we'll see what's happening.
We'll
here.
see.
It's looking good for Biden. Knock on wood for me. That's my preferred candidate this time around. I just based on, you know, just logic and fact and
Human decency.
obviousness and human decency and
Obvious
integrity and you know, a little bit more of obviousness. But yeah, I mean, this is okay, but we'll see how it goes. And
yeah.
Okay, so Aaron, I think we covered a lot this week. We talked about court packing. We talked about Trump many times.
60
and,
minutes.
Interesting. Gonna be an interesting election. All right,
Yeah.
I'll be coming at you guys later in the week with another episode with an election update, and we'll see. Aaron will be at the polls. Aaron will
I'll
not
be leaving
joining
my
for the next
post
episode.
in my apartment to go to a vote center and work there for 5 days. So
Yeah.
I'm going on a 5-day sabbatical.
Absolutely. Maybe we'll get a field piece from you.
I'd love to.
An update. You'll tell us something going on at the poll. Also, I heard a couple of you guys, I've been getting messages from you guys that, you know, you'd like some left-leaning representation on this show. Like, you know, which, you know, in my mind, that's, we're more openly left people. So that's why I bring in the right mostly. But I actually have a couple of ideas. Some people who are what I would consider more extreme left or whatever.
Radical lefties.
A couple radical lefties. So I heard you guys, but I appreciate the feedback. And yeah, we'll come at you later on this week. Episode coming out Friday. And then I think we'll put out an episode. We'll see. I mean, election night, we're going to see how it goes. It'll probably, if election night if we have a victory on election night, we'll have an episode. We'll record one either that night or the next morning. Because it might go really late. But might come out the day after election day next week, which would be that Wednesday. So we can kind of check in where we're at, so we have more information for it. So all right. So anyway, more.
But we'll be here monitoring the polls, watching the results as they come in. Yeah. Bringing it to you live.
Well, yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to RGN, the Regular Guy News. Remember, tell one person about the show. Give us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. And thank you for stopping by the least pretentious name in news. And everybody, stay regular.